The zipper sounded louder than my mother's voice had. I found Nora in the front hallway with her blue duffel bag pressed against one leg and her winter coat pulled over her pajamas. She had packed the way children pack when they have done it too many times. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, and a toothbrush wrapped in a washcloth. Nothing that could not be carried in one hand. "Where are you going?" I asked. She did not look at me. Back. Back where?" "The agency. A group home. Wherever they put girls my age." Behind us, the house was silent. Sadie was asleep upstairs with the paper crown my sister had given her at dinner, crooked beside her pillow. I stepped between Nora and the door. "You are not leaving this house tonight." Her fingers tightened around the strap. "If I stay, they'll take her too." My stomach went cold. "Who told you that?" Nora finally looked at me. There was no anger in her face. That frightened me more than anger would have. "Your mom said one difficult child can ruin the whole placement. Kimberly said the judge can still let you keep Sadie if I say I don't want to be adopted." "They said that to you?" She swallowed. "At dinner, your mom told you to keep the sweet one. She meant Sadie. Everybody always means Sadie." I caught her wrist, then loosened my hand when she flinched. "I am not becoming Sadie's mother by proving every adult who abandoned you was right." Her phone lit up inside her coat pocket. A message preview appeared on the screen. "Once the older one is out, Sadie can finally have a normal family life. Do not let Laura turn this into a fight." The sender was my mother. Nora stared at the floor. "They already sent me back once." That was when I understood. The weekend my parents had called the caseworker and claimed Nora was dangerous had never been about safety. The messages in her phone were simply the part they had been careless enough to write down. I took the bag from her hand. "Tomorrow morning, the judge is going to read every word they sent." Nora's face went white before she whispered the question that broke something open inside me. "What if she agrees with them?" Before I tell you how my family turned a frightened 14-year-old into a problem they wanted removed, tell me where you are listening from, stay with me to the end, and subscribe if you believe no child should have to earn the right to belong. 6 weeks earlier, that blue bag was still under Nora's bed, and I was foolish enough to believe time would eventually make everyone love her. When Nora and Sadie first came to live with me, 11 months before the adoption hearing, Sadie carried a stuffed rabbit by one ear. Nora carried the duffel bag. Sadie was 6 and friendly. In the careful way some children become friendly when they learn adults are kinder if they smile first. The first thing Sadie asked when I showed them the spare room was whether the door locked from the outside. "No," I said, "only from in here." While Sadie held the rabbit to her chest, Nora crossed the room without removing her coat. She checked the window, looked down at the yard, then asked where I kept the phone. She was 14. But there was nothing careless about the way she studied the room. She was measuring how quickly she could get Sadie out. I showed her the phone and wrote my number, the caseworker's number, and emergency contacts on a card beside it. I did not promise they were safe forever. Children who had heard that before knew such promises often comforted the adult more than the child. Instead, I promised small things. I would knock before entering. I would warn them before visitors came. I would not move their belongings without asking. If I said I would pick them up at 4, I would arrive before 4. Sadie unpacked that afternoon. Nora placed 3 shirts in a drawer and left everything else in the bag. It took months before Sadie slept without the hall light. Even then, she often called for Nora before she called for me. Nora would appear in the doorway, tap 4 times against the frame, and ask Sadie to name 4 blue things: the blanket, the curtain, the stripe on her rabbit, Nora's socks. By the 4th answer, Sadie's breathing usually slowed. Sadie also looked to Nora before answering important questions. Pancakes or eggs? A birthday party? Yellow paint for her room? Nora rarely answered for her, but Sadie waited for the smallest nod. I knew that could not last forever. I also knew it had probably kept Sadie steady, long before either girl knew my name. I could not tear away the only safety they understood and call it healing. Erin Walsh called me one Wednesday afternoon at the library. She was the permanency caseworker who had guided us through home visits, school meetings, and months of paperwork. The agency is ready to move toward finalization, she said. If the last review stays on track, we should have a hearing date soon. I sat on the stool beside my book cart. You mean both girls? Both girls, Laura. That evening I brought home cupcakes. Sadie clapped when I explained that a judge might soon make us a legal family. Nora did not touch hers. Can a judge change her mind while we're in there? She asked. About what? About me. I wanted to say no. The judge will review everything, but Erin believes we are ready. I believe we are ready. That isn't the same as no. No, I admitted. But I will be there, and I will tell the truth. A few days later, my parents and my younger sister came for coffee and pie. I wanted them included. I also wanted the judge to see I was not raising two children without support. My mother, Judith, entered with a gift bag printed with Sadie's name. She hugged her before removing her coat. For our little sunshine. Sadie pulled out colored pencils and a sketchbook. Nora stood by the bookcase with her hands in her sweatshirt pocket. Oh, and this is for you, my mother said, handing Nora an unwrapped gift card. Teenagers are impossible to shop for. Thanks, Nora said. Kimberly already had her phone out. Mom, sit with Sadie by the window. The light is perfect. She handed the phone to Nora. Would you take one? Nora took 3 pictures. Kimberly never asked her to join them. My father noticed. I saw it in his face, but he only reached for more coffee. I told myself Sadie was easier to know. She hugged people and talked about school. Nora answered questions as if every word might be used later. My family needed time, and I needed their support. It was the explanation that asked the least of me. After they left, I carried Nora's gift card upstairs. Her door was open, and the duffel bag was visible beneath the bed, still half-packed. You can put the rest of your things away, I said. It's easier if I don't unpack everything. You don't have to prepare to leave. She looked at me. That's usually when people leave fastest. I sat in the desk chair rather than beside her. I won't throw the bag away or move it. I just hope one day you won't need it packed. She did not answer, but she let me place the card on her dresser. The next afternoon, my mother called with what she described as good news. She and my father had completed the agency's requirements to provide short-term support. She offered to keep both girls for one night, so I could finish the remaining paperwork and show the court that we had a dependable family network. I thanked her too quickly. At dinner, I explained the plan. Sadie asked whether Grandma would let her make cookies. Nora said nothing. Her eyes moved toward the stairs and the room where the blue bag waited under her bed. Then she looked directly at me. If they only want Sadie, she asked, will you make me go anyway? Nora's question stayed between us long after Sadie stopped eating. If they only want Sadie, will you make me go anyway? No, I said. I won't send either of you somewhere you're not wanted. She studied my face as if the answer had hidden conditions. That isn't what I asked. I understood too late that she was not asking about an overnight visit. She was asking whether I would keep choosing peace with my family if peace required her to disappear. They invited both of you, I said. And if anything feels wrong, you call me. I'll come get you. Nora looked down at her plate. People say that before they tell you to try harder. I should have stopped the plan then. Instead, I told myself one uncomfortable dinner did not define an entire family. Over the next 2 weeks, my mother made her preference harder to ignore while keeping every invitation polite enough to defend. She called on Monday to ask whether Sadie could join the children's baking table at church. Nora would be bored, she said. It's mostly little kids and frosting. Then neither girl will go this time, I replied. My mother sighed. Laura, you do not have to turn every invitation into a test. 2 days later, Kimberly sent me pictures of 3 fall dresses and asked which one Sadie might like for the family photographs. When I asked what Nora should wear, She replied that Nora could stay home and enjoy some teen time. I told her our schedule would not work. It was easier than saying what I should have said. Do not invite one child while treating the other as an inconvenience. My family heard the softness in my answers and stepped through it. At the library that Thursday, Kimberly called during my lunch break. She said I was making ordinary family plans, unnecessarily complicated. We are trying to give Sadie normal experiences, she said. A normal family life. She has a family life, I replied. Nora is part of it. No one said she wasn't. But not everything has to revolve around her reactions. The phrase stayed with me. Normal family life. It sounded kind until I considered who had to be removed for it to exist. That weekend, my parents invited us for lunch. I almost declined, but Aaron had reminded me that the final adoption report would include our support network. My parents had completed the required checks to provide short-term help. I wanted that to mean something more than paperwork. Sadie wore the yellow sweater my mother had given her. She hugged Judith at the door and accepted a small box of hair clips as if she had been waiting all week for them. My mother laughed and called her sunshine. Nora received no gift. She took off her coat, folded it over one arm, and stayed close enough to see Sadie without joining the conversation. Lunch began quietly. My father asked about school. Nora answered in short sentences, but politely. Sadie talked about a paper squirrel she had made in class, and Kimberly praised every detail as though it belonged in a museum. By dessert, Sadie's smile had changed. Most people would not have noticed. Her shoulders rose toward her ears, and she began rubbing the satin edge of her sleeve between two fingers. Whenever someone asked her another question, she answered too quickly. Nora noticed. She tapped 4 times on the underside of the table. Sadie looked at her and took a slower breath. My mother heard the tapping. "What is that?" "Nothing," Nora said. "It's their little signal," I explained. "It helps Sadie when she gets overwhelmed." "Overwhelmed by pie?" Kimberly asked. Sadie smiled again, although her eyes had begun to shine. "I'm fine." My mother touched her cheek. "Of course you are. You're always such a happy girl." Nora's jaw tightened. She said she's tired. Sadie had not said that aloud, but I knew Nora was right. She had learned to read Sadie before Sadie knew how to explain herself. Kimberly lifted her phone. "Let's get a picture before everyone leaves. Sadie, come sit between Mom and Dad." She arranged them near the window. Sadie obeyed, still smiling. Nora remained beside the table. Kimberly glanced at her. "You could try smiling once. It won't hurt." Nora looked directly at her. "You could try taking one picture without making Sadie perform." The room changed. My father stared at his plate. My mother's hand fell from Sadie's shoulder. Kimberly gave a short laugh. "There it is. One pleasant afternoon, and you still have to make it ugly." Nora pushed back her chair. "I'm going outside." I followed her onto the back porch. Cold air moved through the trees, and Nora stood with her arms folded tightly across her chest. What Kimberly said was unfair. I told her. "Then why am I the one outside?" "Because the way you spoke to her was disrespectful." She kept asking Sadie to smile when Sadie wanted to stop. "You can tell me that without attacking her." Nora looked through the glass door. Inside, Kimberly was taking another picture. Sadie was still smiling. "They don't listen when I say it normally. I listen. Sometimes." The word struck harder because she said it without anger. I reminded her that my family did not understand everything the girls had been through. I said they needed time. Then I asked Nora to give them a chance. She nodded once, but her face closed. At the time, I took the silence for agreement. Later, I understood she had heard something else. She had heard that keeping my family comfortable still mattered more than making her feel safe. That evening, Aaron called to confirm that my parents had completed the final requirements for approved respite support. She said one overnight visit could help everyone practice before the adoption became permanent. I nearly told her about lunch. Instead, I described it as tension between a guarded teenager and relatives who were still learning. My mother called 10 minutes later as if the timing had been arranged. "Let us keep them next Saturday," she said. "Just one night. We're doing the fall family photographs, and it might help Nora feel included." I hesitated. "We need photographs of all of us," my mother continued. "It will help everyone see how well this is working." I wanted Nora included. I wanted proof that my family could learn. Most of all, I wanted to stop feeling as though becoming the girl's mother required me to choose between them and everyone who had known me before. I agreed to one night. When I told the girls, Sadie immediately asked whether Grandma had bought more sprinkles. Nora asked whether I would be there for the photographs. "I have to work until noon," I said. "I'll pick you up tomorrow afternoon." "What time?" 3. She took out her phone. I texted her my parents' address, the pickup time, and the after-hours number Aaron had given us. Nora captured each message before placing the phone face down. "You don't need screenshots," I said. "The messages will still be there. I save things." "Because it helps you remember?" Her expression warned me not to ask again. "Because I save things." I decided it was another way she managed uncertainty. I did not yet understand that Nora had learned words could disappear the moment an adult needed them to. The following Saturday, I drove the girls to my parents' house. Sadie saw mixing bowls and bags of frosting through the kitchen window and hurried up the walk with her rabbit tucked under one arm. Nora remained beside the car. "You have my number," I said. "And Aaron's." She nodded. "One night. Then I'm coming back." Nora looked toward the house. My mother had already opened the door and was calling Sadie inside. "People always say the part before they come back." I hugged her. For 1 second, her arms stayed rigid. Then they closed around me so quickly that I almost missed it. I watched her walk to the porch before I got into the car. As I pulled away, I checked the rearview mirror. My mother had one hand around Sadie's shoulders, drawing her into the warm light of the house. Nora was still standing alone on the porch. For the first 2 hours, everything looked ordinary. At 9:15, my mother sent me a picture of Sadie standing on a kitchen chair with flour on her nose and a wooden spoon in one hand. 8 minutes later, another photo arrived. Sadie held up a tray of crooked cookies, while Kimberly leaned into the frame beside her. I enlarged both pictures, looking for Nora. She was not in either one. I texted my mother and asked where she was. "She wanted space," Judith replied. "You know how teenagers are?" I was sorting returned books at the library, and I let the answer satisfy me because I needed it to. Nora often stepped away when a room became too loud. I told myself that choosing distance was healthier than starting an argument. Near noon, Kimberly sent a group photograph. My mother, father, and Sadie wore shades of rust and cream beneath the maple tree in my parents' yard. Nora stood at the far edge, half hidden behind a branch, wearing the gray sweatshirt I had packed for her. I called my mother. "Why is everyone dressed alike except Nora?" Those were just a few pictures Kimberly wanted. Nora didn't want to participate. "Did anyone bring something for her to wear?" My mother paused. "Laura, she is 14. We cannot force her to enjoy herself." I heard Sadie laughing in the background, and allowed myself to believe the sound meant she was fine. What happened next came to me in pieces. Some came from Aaron's questions later that night. Some came from Nora. Some came from Sadie, who repeated small details without understanding why the adults around her went quiet. Kimberly had brought matching clothes for my parents and Sadie. She told Nora they only needed a few pictures with the little one before taking photographs of everyone. Those few pictures became more. Sadie was moved from the porch to the yard, then into the living room beside artificial leaves and pumpkins. At first, she followed every instruction. She tilted her head, folded her hands, and smiled when Kimberly asked. My mother fixed her hair. Kimberly straightened her collar. My father lifted her chin toward the window when she looked away. By the time the phone was mounted on a small tripod, Sadie had begun rubbing the edge of her sleeve. Nora was standing near the doorway. Sadie looked at her and tapped 4 times against the wooden arm of the chair. Nora crossed the room. "She's done." My mother told her Sadie was having fun. "She said she's done." "She did not say anything," Judith replied. Nora reached for Sadie's hand. My mother said Sadie had been perfectly happy until Nora interfered. Sadie tried to stand. Judith caught her wrist and asked for one last picture. Nora pulled Sadie's hand free. My father put a hand on Nora's shoulder and ordered her into the other room. Nora twisted away, struck his arm aside, and knocked the tripod over. The phone hit the floor. "Don't touch her," Nora shouted. Sadie began screaming. I did not know any of that when Aaron called me at 12:46. I had just left the library and was unlocking my car. "Laura, there has been an incident at your parents' home." My hand went cold around the keys. "What kind of incident?" Nora became physically aggressive. "Your father was struck, some property was damaged, and your mother says Sadie was frightened." For one terrible second, I saw only the version I had feared. Nora out of control. My mother injured. The adoption report changed before the hearing ever happened. "Where are the girls now?" "They are both still at the house." Judith called the after-hours line and asked that Nora be removed from the respite placement. "What about Sadie?" "Your mother says Sadie has calmed down and can remain through tomorrow." The fear inside me shifted. If Nora is dangerous enough to be removed, why does she want to keep Sadie there? I am telling you what was reported. I need to speak with everyone separately. I'm going there. Judith asked that you not come until transport is arranged. She is concerned Nora may make another scene. No one transports Nora without me, and no one keeps Sadie after sending her sister away. I am picking up both girls. I ended the call and drove faster than I should have. My mother was waiting on the porch. Nora sat on the top step with the blue duffel bag beside her. Her face was blank, one sleeve pulled over her knuckles. The bag stopped me. I had left it under her bed at my house. "Why is that here?" My mother folded her arms. "She needs to go back tonight." I packed the things she brought. "You went through her room?" She was in no condition to do it herself. Through the glass storm door, I saw Sadie. Her cheeks were wet. She struck 4 soft beats against the pane, paused, then did it again. Nora did not turn around, but her shoulders moved at the sound. My mother stepped closer. "Sadie can stay. She is finally calm, and taking her now will only reward Nora for controlling everyone." Sadie was crying because the person who usually answered her signal was outside with a packed bag. "Open the door." "Laura," Nora shoved your father. "She broke Kimberly's equipment. She cannot be around Sadie until professionals decide what is safe." "Then why did you ask to keep Sadie?" "Because she deserves one peaceful night." I walked past her and opened the door. Sadie ran into me so hard I nearly lost my balance. She clung to my waist and looked toward Nora. "Is she coming home?" "Yes." My mother said my name, in the warning tone she had used since I was a child. I picked up Sadie's coat. "Both girls are coming with me." Nora took the duffel bag without looking at anyone. My father appeared in the hallway. A red mark crossed his forearm, but when our eyes met, he looked away. Kimberly knelt beside the fallen tripod, checking the cracked corner of her phone case. "She could have broken the phone," she said. Sadie was still crying. Kimberly did not look at her. The drive home was quiet. Sadie held Nora's sleeve from the back seat. Nora stared out the window. Once Sadie was in pajamas beneath a blanket, I asked Nora to join me at the kitchen table. She remained standing. "I shouldn't have pushed him," she said. "What happened before that?" "I pushed him. I knocked the stand over." "That isn't the whole question. It's the part that matters." I wanted to tell her it did not matter, but using force mattered. My father had a mark on his arm, and the phone had hit the floor. "You cannot hit someone because you think they are handling Sadie wrong," I said. "You have to call me or step away." Nora nodded immediately. The speed of it unsettled me more than an argument would have. "Are they moving me?" "No. Aaron has to write it down." She does. So are they moving me? I said no. My answer came too sharply. Nora glanced toward the hallway where Sadie was listening. I softened my voice. I am not asking for you to be moved. Aaron has to understand what happened, and so do I. Nora nodded again. She had already decided that understanding was only the step before judgment. Aaron called after the girls went upstairs. The incident would be documented, and the agency had to review whether Nora's protectiveness had become unsafe or controlling. My mother had already sent a written account, saying Nora controlled access to Sadie and became violent when another adult tried to comfort her. I told Aaron about the 4-beat signal and Sadie crying behind the glass. Aaron listened, but I heard caution in her questions. Had Nora ever blocked me from Sadie? Had she become physical before? Did Sadie appear afraid of her? I answered truthfully. Nora watched Sadie too closely. She sometimes spoke for her. Months earlier, she had shoved a student who grabbed Sadie's backpack. I had understood those things as the remains of a childhood, in which no adult protected either girl. That night, I wondered whether understanding had become an excuse. When I checked the bedrooms, Sadie was asleep beside Nora, one hand wrapped around her sister's sleeve. Nora's eyes were closed, but I could not tell whether she was sleeping. The blue duffel bag was no longer under the bed. It stood beside the bedroom door. The next morning, Aaron called before breakfast. Laura, your mother actually submitted a formal request overnight. She wants the agency to evaluate separate permanency plans for Nora and Sadie. Aaron came to the house that Monday afternoon with a folder tucked under one arm and the careful expression adults use when they have already heard a version of a child before meeting the child herself. She spoke with me first at the kitchen table. Nora waited upstairs with Sadie, although I could hear Sadie moving across the hallway every few minutes to make sure we were still there. Your mother's request does not mean the agency is separating them, Aaron said. But any report involving physical aggression has to be reviewed. She asked to keep Sadie while sending Nora away. I included that in my notes. Doesn't that tell you something? It tells me I need the complete sequence from everyone involved. I understood why she had to say it. I still hated hearing my mother's account treated as one version among several, as though the truth stood somewhere politely between them. Aaron asked to speak with Nora alone. I stayed close enough to hear chairs move but not their words. When Nora came out 20 minutes later, her face looked unchanged. Aaron joined me in the hallway. She acknowledges striking your father's arm and knocking over the phone stand. She says she should not have done either. Did she explain why she crossed the room? She said Sadie wanted to leave. Did she mention the signal? No. I looked toward the stairs. She knows you are worried she controls Sadie. She may think anything she says about protecting her will prove your concern. That is possible. It is also why we need to make sure Sadie is allowed to speak and act without Nora deciding what she needs. The problem was that Aaron was not wrong. We made a safety plan that afternoon. Nora was not to use her body to block, pull, or remove Sadie from another adult unless there was an immediate emergency. If she believed Sadie was distressed, she had to call me or another approved adult. Sadie would begin practicing coming to me when she felt afraid, instead of relying only on Nora. Written on paper. Every point sounded reasonable. Nora sat with her arms crossed while Aaron explained it. So if she asks me for help, I ignore her? She asked. No, I said. You tell me. What if you are not there? You call me. What if no one listens? Aaron leaned forward. Then you keep using words. You do not put your hands on someone. Nora looked at the safety plan. Okay. She signed where Aaron indicated without asking another question. I could see what she had heard, even though no one had said it. The adults now had a document explaining how everyone would stay safe around her. After Aaron left, I tried to soften the damage. This plan is not saying you are dangerous. It has my name on it. It is saying we need a better way to handle situations when Sadie gets overwhelmed. Nora folded her copy twice and slid it into her pocket. You mean when I get overwhelmed? I wanted to deny it, but my hesitation answered for me. Over the next few days, Judith and Kimberly sent Aaron more examples. Each one was something that had happened. Each one arrived without the part that made it understandable. My mother reported that Nora resisted letting Sadie attend family activities alone. Kimberly wrote that Nora became rude whenever adults praised Sadie. They mentioned that Nora checked Sadie's phone and school tablet. When Aaron asked me about the devices, I had to admit Nora sometimes reviewed messages before Sadie opened them. She said she was looking for unknown names because their biological mother had once contacted them through someone else's account. That history matters, Aaron said. But Laura, it cannot mean Nora monitors every part of Sadie's life forever. I know. The words came easily. Knowing what to do about it did not. Once the reports existed, I began seeing Nora through them. At breakfast, she asked Sadie whether she had eaten enough before school. The question sounded like an order. At pickup, Nora sat on a bench outside Sadie's classroom instead of waiting near the main entrance. I wondered whether she was checking who spoke to her sister. When Sadie hesitated between two library books, she looked at Nora before choosing. I noticed the movement, as if I had never seen it before. That evening, I found Nora packing crackers into Sadie's backpack. "She already has a snack," I said. "She did not eat the one they gave her yesterday. I can handle her food." Nora stopped with one packet in her hand. "I need you to let me be the parent," I said. Her expression did not harden. It simply emptied. "I'm trying." The answer followed me into the kitchen. Nora did not know how to stop protecting Sadie, because there had been years when no one else did it. If their mother disappeared for a night, Nora found food. If a stranger entered the apartment, Nora locked Sadie in the bedroom. If adults argued, Nora counted colors until Sadie stopped crying. Those habits could not remain unchanged. Sadie needed the freedom to become 6 instead of someone's emergency. Nora needed the freedom to become 14 instead of a substitute mother. But removing Nora would not heal either girl. It would only teach them that the survival skills adults forced upon Nora had become the reason she was no longer wanted. Aaron returned later that week to review the written accounts. She read part of my mother's report aloud. Sadie became relaxed once Nora was removed from the room. Sadie was coloring at the other end of the table. Her crayon stopped. "I wasn't relaxed," she said. Aaron lowered the paper. "What do you remember?" "I cried because Nora was outside." "Did you feel scared of Nora?" Sadie looked at her sister before answering. Nora immediately turned toward the window, trying not to influence her. "No," Sadie said. "I wanted her to come back." Aaron made a note. The report also described the 4 taps as a command Nora used to control Sadie's behavior. "It is a grounding technique," I said. "They have used it since before they came here." "Was it taught by a therapist?" "I don't know. Nora taught it to me." Without documentation, my explanation sounded less solid than I wanted it to. Nora's phone vibrated in her lap. She glanced at the screen, captured something, then turned it face down. I assumed she was saving another appointment or school message. She did not look up again. That night, I called my mother. "You left out the beginning," I said. "Beginning of what?" "You said Sadie relaxed after Nora was removed. She says she was crying because Nora was outside." "Sadie is 6. She does not understand what happened. She understands whether she was frightened." My mother sighed. "I reported what I saw. You are so determined to protect Nora that you are starting to deny what she does." "I am not denying that she pushed Dad." "Then stop looking for excuses. Compassion is not the same as pretending a dangerous pattern is harmless." The words landed exactly where she intended. I had spent months worrying that love might make me blind. My mother knew that fear because she had helped put it there. Kimberly took the phone from her. "Sadie could have a normal family life," she said, "if she did not have to live according to Nora's moods. Nora is also a child." "No, Laura. She stopped being one a long time ago." I ended the call before my anger became something they could report to. The following afternoon, Aaron emailed to say the finalization hearing would remain on the calendar. The agency was not recommending separation, but several concerns had to be resolved before the judge could approve anything. I read the message twice at the kitchen counter. Across the room, Nora's phone lit up beside her homework. I saw only the first line before she grabbed it. A good sister knows when staying becomes selfish. She captured the message, locked the screen, and slipped the phone into her pocket. When I asked who had written it, Nora looked straight at me. "No one," Nora said, and slipped the phone into her pocket. I should have pressed harder. Instead, I told myself that trust could not be demanded from a child who had spent years protecting every private thought from adults. I gave her space because I wanted to respect her. I did not understand that someone else was already using that space to reach her. Over the next several days, Nora began preparing Sadie for things Sadie did not know she was being prepared for. I found them on the bedroom floor with index cards spread between them. Sadie was decorating each card with stars, while Nora wrote information in block letters. "What are you working on?" I asked. "A memory game," Sadie said, holding up a card with my phone number. "I have to know Mom's number without looking." Nora pointed to another card. "And where your school papers are." Sadie recited that her medical papers were in the blue folder in my desk. She knew which drawer held extra pajamas, where I kept the nightlight batteries, and which neighbor to call if she could not reach me. "That is a lot for a memory game," I said. "It's useful," Nora replied. Sadie tapped 4 times on the floor. "Nora says you know this now, so I can do it with you too." "I do know it." "See?" Nora told her. "You'll be fine." The words were ordinary. The way she said them was not. She sounded like someone finishing instructions before a departure. I asked Nora later whether school or the hearing was worrying her. She shrugged and said judges made everyone nervous. I decided she might be struggling with changing her name. Bennett was one of the last things connecting the girls to their biological parents, and Nora might see becoming a Whitmore as erasing what remained. That explanation kept me from asking the more important question. Was someone making her believe she did not belong in mine? The signs became harder to ignore. When Sadie made a card for adoption day and wrote Whitmore family across the top, she asked Nora to add her name. Nora handed the marker back. "You already wrote everyone." "I didn't write you. You can put mine wherever." Sadie left a space beside her own name. Nora never filled it. 2 days later, I brought home a dark green sweater for Nora to wear to court. She folded it carefully and placed it on my bed. "It doesn't fit?" I asked. "It fits." "Then why are you giving it back?" "You can return it before the tags come off." "I bought it for you. You might need the money for something else." I asked whether she would rather choose something herself. "I have clothes." She left before I could tell her the sweater was my clumsy way of showing I expected her to be standing beside me. Sadie wanted pancakes after the hearing. When I asked Nora what she wanted, she kept her eyes on her homework. "Whatever your daughter likes." "Our daughter," I said. "And I asked what you want." "I don't care. You usually care about food." "That doesn't mean I need a vote." I sat across from her. "Are you worried that choosing something makes the adoption too real? You are allowed to miss your parents and still want this." Nora looked almost confused. "That's what you think this is about? What else would it be about?" She returned to her worksheet. "Nothing." Again, I let the conversation end because I thought patience was kindness. That evening, Sadie was building a house from cardboard boxes. She placed her rabbit inside, then moved a smaller toy dog beside it. "The dog has to go first," she explained. "Why?" "Because good big sisters know when to leave first." The scissors in my hand stopped moving. "Who told you that?" Sadie's eyes shifted toward the hallway. "Grandma says that." "When did Grandma say it?" "I don't remember." Nora appeared in the doorway. She heard it wrong. Sadie looked down at the cardboard house. "What did she hear?" I asked. "Grandma was talking about a movie." "Which movie?" Nora's mouth tightened. "I don't know. Ask Grandma." I did. Judith sounded offended before I finished repeating Sadie's words. That child watches dozens of things, she said. Now every sentence in her head is my fault? She said you told her good sisters know when to leave first. That sounds like something Nora would say. Have you or Kimberly sent either girl messages about placement? There was a pause, just long enough to matter. I have encouraged Nora to think about what is best for her sister. That was not my question. I am their grandmother. You are not allowed to discuss placement, separation, the hearing, or what the agency might do with either child. Not by phone, not by text, and not when I am out of the room. Judith lowered her voice. You are isolating those girls from the only family willing to support you. Support does not mean frightening them. You are turning this into a war, Laura. No, I am telling you where the boundary is. I ended the call with my hands shaking. It was the first time I had spoken to my mother without softening the last sentence, so she could pretend it meant something else. Within an hour, Kimberly called. Mom is devastated, she said. She suggested dinner before the hearing so everyone can clear the air. I don't think dinner will fix this. The judge is going to look at your support network. Do you really want the agency hearing that you cut off your whole family days before finalization? There it was again. Not concern about Nora, only a warning that conflict might make me look unstable. I should have refused. Instead, I agreed to one dinner at my parents' house the night before court. I told myself I wanted no unresolved fight following us into the hearing. Part of me still hoped one firm conversation could turn my family back into the people I needed them to be. After the call, I found Nora in the hallway with her phone in one hand. 3 message previews flashed before she cleared them. Do not make Laura choose in court. If she fights the agency, Sadie could lose everything. You are old enough to ask for a home that can handle you. Nora. She captured the screen, swiped the notifications away, and opened her photo gallery. For a second, I saw a folder labeled School. It contained rows of screenshots. She locked the phone. Who is sending those? It's not your business. If someone is talking to you about the hearing, it is my business. You said you wouldn't go through my phone. I won't. I am asking you to show me. No. Every instinct told me to keep pushing. Instead, I stepped back because I had promised not to search her belongings or take her phone without permission. All right, I said. But you can bring anything to me, even if you think it will ruin the hearing. Nora laughed once without humor. That's easy for you to say. I sat on the bottom stair. I don't need you to be easy, Nora. I don't need you to smile for my family or make them comfortable. You do not have to earn your place here. Her face changed for only a second. What if easy is all anyone has room for? I have room for both of you. She looked toward Sadie's bedroom. You think you do? Before we left for dinner the next evening, I went upstairs to tell Nora it was time. The green sweater still lay folded on my bed. Nora was standing beside hers with the blue duffel bag open. She tested the zipper from one end to the other, then tested it again. What are you doing? She kept her hand on the metal tab, just making sure it still works. Nora closed the blue bag before we left, but she did not push it back beneath the bed. She placed it beside the nightstand as if she expected to need it soon. My parents' dining room looked prepared for a celebration rather than an apology. Judith had made macaroni and cheese because Sadie once told her it was her favorite. A small white cake sat on the sideboard, with Forever Family written across the top in yellow icing. Kimberly was already holding her phone when we arrived. Let's get one picture before dinner, she said. Tomorrow will be chaotic. We can take pictures after the hearing, I replied. This one is just for us. She positioned my parents behind the girls and told Sadie to stand in the middle. Nora moved beside her, but Kimberly pointed toward the end of the group. A little farther over. I need Mom and Sadie together. Nora stepped to the edge of the frame. She did not complain, which should have worried me more than an argument would have. Kimberly took several photographs, examined them, and asked Sadie to smile again. I ended the session by saying dinner was getting cold. My mother filled Sadie's plate before anyone else sat down. Would you like to sleep here next weekend? We could make more cookies, and show everyone at church your new dress. Sadie looked at Nora. There will be no overnight visits next weekend, I said. Judith's serving spoon stopped over the bowl. I was asking Sadie, and I'm answering as her parent. Almost her parent, Kimberly said lightly. Let's not make tonight tense. Tomorrow does not change the rules we already have. Nora picked up her fork but did not eat. Sadie took one bite, then glanced around the table as if trying to decide whether smiling was still required. Kimberly turned to her. There is a children's program at church next month. You would love it. Would Nora come? Sadie asked. When things settle down, Kimberly replied. Maybe. Nora placed her fork beside her plate. I looked at my sister. There will be no events that invite Sadie and exclude Nora. You cannot make a 14-year-old attend activities for little children, Kimberly said. I am not making Nora attend. I am telling you to stop using her age as an excuse to offer Sadie a separate family. My father shifted in his chair. Judith cut his meat as though the conversation were happening somewhere else. I reminded them that, if everything went as planned, both girls would legally become my daughters the following morning. Thomas kept his eyes on his plate. His silence answered a question I had not wanted to ask. My family had not gathered to welcome two children. They had gathered to make one last argument for keeping only the child they liked. This dinner was supposed to clear the air, Judith said. Instead, you arrived ready to accuse everyone. I arrived with one boundary. No one discusses placement with either girl. No one asks Sadie to go somewhere. Nora is deliberately excluded, and no one describes Nora as a problem that has to be removed. Judith's face tightened. You are letting a traumatized teenager decide the future of a 6-year-old. Nora is not deciding anything. I am. Then you are choosing badly. Kimberly leaned forward. We all saw what happened during respite. Nora became violent because another adult tried to comfort Sadie. You saw the moment she reacted. None of you have been willing to talk about what happened before it. She shoved Dad. Kimberly said, I know. Nora knows. We are addressing it. That does not give you permission to erase everything that led to it. My mother set down her napkin. Sadie cannot spend her childhood being managed by Nora's moods. She is not being managed. She looks at Nora before she answers. She panics when Nora leaves the room. She cannot attend one family event without Nora interfering. That is why both girls are receiving support. You do not heal their attachment by tearing them apart. Nora stood. Can I use the bathroom? I nodded. She left the dining room without looking at anyone. I did not know until later that she had stopped in the hallway. From where she stood, she could hear every word while remaining hidden behind the wall. Judith waited until Nora was gone before lowering her voice. You still have time to be practical. There is nothing practical about separating sisters. You could give Sadie stability. Nora needs a place equipped for girls like her. Girls like her? Older children with serious damage. My hands tightened beneath the table. She is not damaged property. You know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. Judith looked toward the hallway, then back at me. Whatever caution she had maintained finally disappeared. Keep the sweet one. Send the older girl back. The room went silent. Sadie stopped chewing. Kimberly looked down. My father closed his eyes, but said nothing. I pushed my chair away from the table. They are sisters, not two choices on a menu. You are being emotional, Judith said. If you insist on taking both, you may lose both. Thomas lifted one hand. Everyone is emotional. No. I called for Nora. She came from the hallway with her face composed and her hands empty. I assumed she had heard only raised voices, not the sentence that would follow her home. I collected the girls' coats. Judith tried to give Sadie a slice of the cake. I left it untouched on the counter. During the drive home, Sadie asked whether there would still be pancakes after court. I told her yes. Nora stared out the window. I thought she was angry with my family. I did not understand that she had already accepted their verdict. At home, Nora helped Sadie into pajamas, and read half a chapter of her bedtime book. When I checked on them, Sadie was asleep with the paper crown Kimberly had given her beside the pillow. Nora was not in the room. The blue duffel bag was gone. I heard the zipper in the hallway. Nora stood by the front door, wearing her winter coat over her pajamas. The bag rested against her leg. She had packed 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, and a toothbrush wrapped in a washcloth. On Sadie's pillow, she had left the stuffed rabbit and a square of paper marked with 4 blue dots. "Where are you going?" I asked. Back. Back where?" "The agency. A group home. Wherever they put girls my age." "How were you planning to get there?" "I can walk to the convenience store and call the after-hours number." "You are not leaving this house tonight." She gripped the strap. "If I go before court, you can still keep Sadie." "I am not keeping Sadie without you." "You can't do that to her." "I am not doing anything to her." "You'll throw away her home because of me." Her voice broke on the final word. I stepped between her and the door, but did not lock it. "Listen to me. If anyone says I can only adopt Sadie by giving you back, I will not complete either adoption." Nora stared at me in horror. "Then she loses everything." "No. The adults who created that choice are responsible for it, not you. They already sent me back once. They told Erin I was dangerous, and she had to listen. They sent you out of their house. I brought both of you home. They said one difficult kid can ruin the whole placement." "Who said that?" Nora's phone lit inside her pocket. A message preview appeared on the screen. "Once the older one is out, Sadie can finally have a normal family life. Do not let Laura turn this into a fight." The sender was my mother. Nora covered the screen with her hand. I did not take the phone. "Have they been sending messages like that to you?" She looked toward the stairs. "Do you want to show me?" I asked. For a long time, she did not move. Then she unlocked the phone and opened the folder labeled School. Rows of screenshots filled the screen. "I save things," she whispered, "because people say they never said them." The screenshots filled Nora's phone in neat rows. Some were weeks old. Others had been captured only hours earlier. I sat on the floor beside her, instead of taking the phone from her hand. The blue duffel bag remained by the front door, close enough that Nora could reach it without standing. "Will you show me the first one?" I asked. She opened a message from Kimberly. "Sadie needs chances to do things without you watching every second. Giving her space would prove you care about what she needs." The message had arrived the morning after my parents sent Nora home from the respite visit. Another came 2 days later. "Your sister was finally calm after you left. You should think about what that means." I glanced toward the stairs. Sadie was still asleep. Her stuffed rabbit lay on the pillow beside her, covering the square of paper marked with 4 blue dots. "Did Sadie tell you she was calm?" I asked. Nora shook her head. "Your mom did." The next messages sounded gentler. Judith told Nora that older sisters sometimes had to make mature decisions. Kimberly wrote that Sadie deserved activities where no one was waiting for Nora to become angry. Then the language, "If the agency decides Laura cannot manage both of you, Sadie could lose this home too. One difficult child can make a whole placement look unsafe. If you really love her, you will not force Laura to choose in front of the judge." Nora watched my face while I read. She was not looking for comfort. She was measuring whether I believed them. "How long has this been happening?" "Since Grandma's house." "Why didn't you tell me?" "You kept saying the agency had to look at everything." "They do, but that does not mean anyone gets to frighten you." "You said they had a reason to be worried." I said, pushing my father was wrong. "I did not say you should lose your home." Nora lowered the phone. "It sounds the same when adults write it down." I asked why she had placed the screenshots inside a folder labeled School. "People don't look in school folders." "That isn't what I meant." She rubbed her thumb over the edge of the case. "There was a foster mom before you. She said she would keep both of us until they found somewhere permanent. I waited. She texted me that she would never let them move Sadie without me. Then she decided I was too much." "What happened to the message?" She deleted it from the tablet. When I told the caseworker, she said maybe I misunderstood. Nora's voice remained flat, but her hand had begun to shake. Another time, someone told me they wanted Sadie for a weekend. They kept her longer. When I said they were trying to split us, the worker asked if anyone had written that down. Did they? No. The phone dimmed between us. So now you save everything, I said. If it says move, placement, or your sister. There was no pride in the answer. She spoke as though describing where she kept an emergency flashlight. I asked whether I could continue reading. Nora hesitated, then unlocked the screen again. The later messages were no longer suggestions. Tell Aaron you think a home for older girls would be better for you. Use the words therapeutic placement. They will understand that you are trying to get help. You can say the separation is voluntary and in Sadie's best interests. I read the final sentence twice. Do you know what voluntary separation means? It means I say I want to go. Do you want to go? Nora looked toward the stairs. That isn't the point. It is the only point that matters when someone claims the decision is yours. She opened another screenshot. Kimberly had written a short script for what Nora should say if Judge Cooper asked whether she consented to the adoption. I believe a more appropriate therapeutic placement would meet my needs, while allowing Sadie to remain in a stable family. The words did not sound like Nora. They did not sound like any frightened 14-year-old packing 3 shirts and a toothbrush. Did they ask you to memorize this? They said I shouldn't make everyone wait while I tried to explain. I understood the plan then. My mother and sister did not merely want Nora removed. They wanted her to request it herself. If Nora told Aaron and the judge that she preferred another placement, Judith could insist no one had separated the girls. Kimberly could say they had only respected a teenager's wishes. They were teaching a child how to sign her own rejection. I remembered every time I had asked Nora to give my family another chance. Every invitation I had accepted because I wanted the court to see a dependable support network. Every soft answer I had given when my mother excluded Nora. My desire to keep the peace had given them access to her. I could not undo that night by sitting on the floor and hating myself. Nora needed me to act, not collapse. May I take pictures of these with my phone? Her hand closed around the device. Why? So Aaron and Mara can see exactly what was sent. No. Nora. They need to know. The agency might get mad. At you? They'll say I hid it. Or they'll think everything is too complicated and move Sadie. The adults who sent these messages created the problem. You did not. What if court gets canceled tomorrow? It might be delayed. Her eyes filled before she looked away. Then Sadie still doesn't have a family. She has one tonight. That isn't legal. No, but it is real. A right adoption that happens late is better than a wrong adoption that happens on time. Nora pressed her lips together. I will not send anything without your permission, I said. But if you let me share these messages, you will not have to carry them alone anymore. She stared at the phone for so long that the screen went dark again. Then she placed it in my hand. You can send them. I called Mara first. My voice sounded calmer than I felt as I explained what Nora had saved. Do not crop anything, she said. Do not delete messages, change contact names, or write on the images. Photograph the full screen, including dates and senders. If Nora agrees, export the conversation too. Nora sat beside me while we followed each instruction. I asked permission before opening every thread. She corrected me when I almost skipped a message because it seemed repetitive. They say the same thing differently, she explained. That's how they make it sound true. When the files were ready, I sent them to Mara and Aaron. Aaron called within minutes. I received emails from Judith using some of these exact phrases, she said. Therapeutic placement, voluntary separation, Sadie's best interests. So she told the agency Nora wanted to leave before Nora ever said it. I need to compare the dates and the full conversations. I also need to amend my report. Does this stop tomorrow's hearing? I cannot promise it will proceed. Mara will speak with the court first thing in the morning. Nora heard every word. her body folded inward. I moved the phone away. Aaron, Nora believes the agency will punish her for not sharing these sooner. No, Aaron said. Nora, you are not in trouble. Nora did not answer. She also believes Sadie will be removed if the hearing is delayed, I continued. That is not the agency's plan. Both girls remain placed with you while we review this. Nora lifted her head slightly. Before Aaron could say more, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Sadie appeared in the hallway, rubbing one eye. She saw the duffel bag beside the front door. Are you going? She asked Nora. Nora opened her mouth, but could not answer. Sadie began rubbing the edge of her pajama sleeve. I knelt between them. No one is choosing one of you tonight. Nora is staying here, and so are you. Sadie looked at her sister. Nora tapped 4 slow beats against the floor. This time I tapped the same rhythm beside her. Sadie's shoulders lowered. I took the duffel bag away from the door, but I did not hide it. I placed it beside Nora's chair where she could see that it still belonged to her and that she did not need to carry it out. Near midnight, after both girls had finally gone upstairs, Aaron called again. Laura, the language in these messages matches the language your mother used in the safety report. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. Then Aaron asked the question that changed what we thought had happened during that weekend. Did Nora ever tell you they asked her to lie about what happened? Aaron's question stayed in the kitchen after the call ended. Did they ask you to lie about what happened? Nora sat at the table with both hands around a mug she had not touched. The blue duffel bag rested beside her chair. Sadie had gone back upstairs, but I could hear the old floorboards creak each time she checked whether Nora was still below. I did not lie, Nora said. I know. I told Aaron I pushed him. You told her the part you believed would get you removed. Her eyes dropped to the mug. I moved into the chair across from her. I am not asking you to defend yourself. I need to understand what happened before you touched my father. Nora was silent long enough that I thought she might refuse. Then she tapped 4 times against the side of the mug. Sadie did that first, she said. She was sitting in the chair, and Grandma kept telling her to smile. What happened after the signal? I told them she was done. Grandma said she was fine. Was she? Nora shook her head. Sadie tried to stand up. Grandma held her wrist and said, "One more picture." I pulled her hand away. And my father? He grabbed my shoulder. Then you pushed him? I hit his arm away harder than I needed to. The phone stand fell when I turned. She looked at me as though waiting for the sentence adults always gave next. I reached across the table but stopped before touching her. You should not have used that much force. I know. That does not mean their version is true. Nora's forehead tightened. You can admit what you did wrong without accepting a story that begins after everyone else's choices, I said. Those are not the same thing. Sadie appeared in the doorway, wearing one sock and carrying her rabbit. Grandma said I had to smile one more time, she said. I turned toward her. Do you remember why Nora came over? I did the taps. What happened to the phone? Nora knocked it down, because they wouldn't let me be done. Sadie said it the way a 6-year-old explained a spilled cup. There was no speech prepared and no desire to accuse anyone. She climbed onto the chair beside Nora and pressed the rabbit into her sister's lap. I called Aaron back. She listened while I explained what both girls had said. When Sadie repeated her memory, Aaron asked only whether she felt safe now and whether she wanted to remain with me. She did not turn the child into a witness or press her for adult details. I have enough to compare with the written reports, Aaron said. Do not keep questioning her tonight. I won't. The important issue is not whether Nora made contact with your father. She did, and the support plan still matters. The issue is whether the adults intentionally removed the context and then used the incident to pressure Nora into requesting separation. After the call, I opened the messages again with Nora's permission. The official emails my mother had sent Aaron described Nora as becoming aggressive when adults attempted to comfort Sadie. The messages sent privately to Nora told a different truth. You always rush in when Sadie gets upset. She needs to learn other adults can comfort her, without you interfering. Those sentences admitted that Sadie had already been distressed before Nora crossed the room. Aaron now had two versions written by the same people. One version claimed Nora caused Sadie's fear. The other acknowledged Nora responded to it. There was still one piece missing. My mother and Kimberly had been careful in the messages sent to Nora. They used guilt and warnings, but they did not fully explain why separating the girls mattered so much to them. I knew someone else had seen more. My father answered on the fourth ring. "It is after midnight," he said. "I need the family message thread from the weekend the girls stayed with you." His breathing changed. "Laura, your mother already explained what happened. I am not asking what she explained. I am asking what all of you wrote." Judith wanted what was best for Sadie. "Did you know she and Kimberly were messaging Nora directly?" A long silence followed. "Dad?" "They were trying to help her understand the situation. She is 14. They told her Sadie would lose her home unless she volunteered to leave. No one wanted either child hurt. That is not an answer." He lowered his voice. "Your mother thought Nora would fight any separation if she heard it from an adult. Kimberly believed it had to sound like Nora's decision. The admission left me colder than a denial would have. You knew. I knew they had spoken to her. And you said nothing." "I did not agree with every word. You sat in the room while Mom sent her back with a packed bag. You watched Sadie cry behind the door. Then you let them tell the agency she was calm." My father began the sentence he had used throughout my childhood. "Your mother only wanted to protect?" I interrupted him. "She wrote this to a child. Once the older one is out, Sadie can finally have a normal family life. Tell me what part of that protects anyone." He did not answer. "There is a group message," I said. "Send it to me. I cannot betray your mother. You already chose. Every time you stayed quiet, you chose her version over what happened to those girls." He breathed into the phone for several seconds. "If you do not send it," I continued, "I will tell Aaron you confirmed there was a coordinated conversation and refused to provide it. You can decide whether you want your silence described by you or by me." The file arrived 9 minutes later. My father had exported the family thread from his tablet. His name appeared among the participants. He had rarely responded, but he had read everything. The messages began before the respite visit. Judith had written that Sadie finally looks like one of us in the church pictures. Kimberly replied that Nora made every gathering feel like a public lesson about foster care and trauma. Another message complained that people asked uncomfortable questions whenever Nora refused to smile or stayed close to Sadie. Then came the sentence that exposed the timing of their plan. "Once the adoption is final, Laura will never let Sadie come anywhere without Nora. If the agency is going to reconsider, it has to happen now." They had never offered to raise Sadie themselves. They did not discuss school pickups, nightmares, doctor visits, or what happened when Sadie woke crying for Nora. They wanted holidays, church photographs, weekend outings, and the praise attached to being kind to a little girl who smiled on command. They wanted the child everyone enjoyed seeing. They expected me to carry the daily work and Nora to disappear, so that work never interrupted the picture. Mara called before dawn. She had received the original screenshots, the exported message threads, and Nora's short written confirmation that the messages were sent to her account. "Judge Cooper may postpone the finalization," she warned. "She may want more time to review the interference." "I understand. If the agency maintains its recommendation, the hearing may still proceed." "And if someone suggests approving Sadie but delaying Nora?" Mara paused. "What do you want me to say? That I will withdraw both petitions?" Nora looked up from the couch. Aaron called next. She confirmed the supplemental report would state that the agency had never threatened to remove Sadie if Nora consented to adoption. No worker had advised Nora to request a therapeutic placement, and no separation plan had been under consideration before Judith's reports. "Laura, withdrawing both petitions could extend the girl's legal uncertainty," Aaron said. "I know. That uncertainty is one of Nora's greatest fears." which is why I will not let anyone use it to force her out. These girls have spent years being told stability can disappear unless they behave exactly as adults want. I will not repeat that lesson in a courtroom. Morning arrived before any of us slept. Nora refused the dress Judith had chosen weeks earlier. She wore dark pants and the green sweater I had bought, the one she had tried to return. Sadie wore a yellow cardigan and carried her rabbit from room to room. The duffel bag remained beside the front door. I did not hide it. Nora had spent too long having adults control what she was allowed to keep. Sadie placed the stuffed rabbit inside the open bag. Nora lifted it out and handed it back. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. At the courthouse, Mara met us near the security desk. Erin stood farther down the hall holding a new folder against her chest. Nora watched the courtroom door, as if it might open, and swallow one of us. "If I say yes," she asked, "can they still take Sadie because of me?" I faced her fully. "No. But if anyone tries, they will have to go through me first." The courtroom door opened. The courtroom was smaller than the meeting room at my library. There was no jury, no crowd, and no dramatic row of strangers waiting to watch our lives change. There were only 2 wooden tables, a judge's bench, and a box of tissues placed beside a pitcher of water. My family had arrived before us. Judith wore the blue suit she saved for church holidays. Kimberly held a gift bag in one hand, and her phone in the other. Thomas stood behind them with a small camera hanging from his wrist. They had come prepared for a celebration, as though the messages sent during the night had not altered anything. Kimberly raised her phone when Sadie entered. "Not yet," I said. "No pictures until the hearing is over." My mother looked at me as if I had embarrassed her in public. Nora moved closer to my side, while Sadie held the sleeve of her green sweater. Judge Elaine Cooper entered, reviewed the appearances, and explained that the hearing concerned both girls' adoption petitions. Her voice was calm, which made every sound in the room seem sharper. Mara stood. "Your Honor, supplemental material was submitted this morning. It concerns communications intended to influence Nora Bennett's consent and the agency's permanency recommendation." She did not make a speech. She handed the court a short packet, then sat down. Erin confirmed that the messages had been preserved from Nora's phone and compared with emails Judith had already sent the agency. The dates, phrases, and instructions matched. She also confirmed that no caseworker had advised Nora to request a different placement or warned that Sadie would lose my home if Nora consented to the adoption. Judge Cooper turned several pages before reading aloud. "Tell Erin you think a home for older girls would be better for you." Nora's fingers tightened around the edge of her chair. The judge read another message. "If the agency decides Laura cannot manage both of you, Sadie could lose this home too." My mother shifted beside Kimberly, but neither spoke. Then Judge Cooper read from the family thread my father had provided. "Sadie finally looks like one of us in the church pictures." The room seemed to shrink. Another message followed. "Once the adoption is final, Laura will never let Sadie come anywhere without Nora. If the agency is going to reconsider, it has to happen now." Each sentence changed the meaning of the safety report. Words that had sounded like concern now appeared beside instructions designed to frighten Nora into leaving. Judge Cooper looked at my mother. "Mrs. Whitmore, did you send these messages?" Judith sat straighter. "I was trying to make Nora understand what her behavior was costing Sadie. Why was a 14-year-old made responsible for whether a 6-year-old kept her home? That is not what I meant. You told her Sadie could lose the placement unless she requested another home." Judith glanced at me before answering. She understood the sacrifice we were asking. Mara did not need to say anything. My mother had named it herself. Judge Cooper's expression did not change. "A child's consent to adoption must be her own. It cannot be produced by making her believe another child's safety depends upon surrendering her place in the family." Kimberly leaned forward. "Sadie lights up every room she enters. Nora frightens people. We were only trying to give the little one a chance at a normal childhood." I looked at my sister and finally understood how completely she had measured both girls by what they gave the adults around them. Sadie smiled, so they called her healing. Nora watched, questioned, and remembered, so they called her damage. Erin spoke next. She did not pretend Nora had done nothing wrong during the respite weekend. Nora used unnecessary force when she struck Mr. Whitmore's arm away, she said. That behavior remains part of her treatment and safety plan. However, the original report omitted that Sadie had signaled distress, asked to stop the photographs, and was physically prevented from leaving the chair. It was also incorrect in stating that Sadie became calm after Nora was removed. Sadie cried and repeatedly called for her sister. Erin placed both hands on the folder. The agency does not recommend separating these siblings. We recommend finalizing both adoptions with trauma-informed family support from approved individuals who can respect the girls' relationship and Laura's parental boundaries. Judge Cooper turned to me. Miss Whitmore, after everything you have learned, do you wish to proceed? Yes, Your Honor, with both petitions. And if the court determined that only Sadie's petition could be approved today? I had already made the choice in my kitchen hours earlier. Saying it in that room still felt like stepping off solid ground. Then I would withdraw both petitions. Sadie looked up at me. Nora stopped breathing for a moment. I kept my voice steady. I want both girls to have legal permanence. But I cannot become Sadie's mother by proving Nora was right to believe love only has room for the easier child. If more time is needed, we will take more time. I will not build our family by returning one of them. Judge Cooper watched me, then turned to Nora. Nora, I need to hear what you want. Not what you believe Sadie needs. Not what Mrs. Whitmore wants. What do you want? Nora's lips parted, but the first answer came from the fear she had practiced. Sadie can stay without me. That was not my question, the judge said gently. I'm not asking what you are willing to lose. Nora looked at Sadie. Sadie reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. Then Nora looked at me. I did not nod or tell her what to say. For once, no adult needed her answer to protect anyone else. I want to stay, she said. Her voice trembled, but she did not look away. I just didn't think I was allowed to want that. Sadie squeezed her hand. Do we get the same adoption day? Judge Cooper's face softened. Yes, the same day. The judge reviewed the remaining findings, accepted Nora's consent, and approved both petitions. Their names became Nora Bennett Whitmore and Sadie Bennett Whitmore, keeping the name they had shared before adding mine. When Judge Cooper signed the orders, Sadie whispered, Is that it? That is it, I told her. Erin met us outside the courtroom and explained that my parents and Kimberly would be removed from the approved respite list. There would be no unsupervised contact. Any future relationship would depend on what I considered safe and what both girls wanted. Judith followed us into the hall. Sadie, sweetheart, come take one picture with Grandma. Sadie looked at me, then at Nora. She slipped her hand into her sister's and walked toward the exit without answering. Nora carried both adoption certificates until we reached the courthouse steps. She studied the raised seal on hers as if searching for the hidden line that allowed someone to undo it. So this is permanent, even if I get angry again? She asked. Especially then, we work through it, I said. We do not return people. We left the courthouse carrying 2 adoption certificates, 1 stuffed rabbit, and a silence none of us knew how to fill. Sadie wanted pancakes, so I drove us to a diner 3 blocks from the courthouse. We sat in a red vinyl booth beneath a clock shaped like a coffee cup. Sadie placed both certificates beside the napkin holder and checked them every few minutes, as though the raised seals might disappear if she looked away too long. Nora kept hers folded beneath one hand. You can put it in my bag if you're worried about spilling something, I said. I'm not worried. She moved her water farther from the paper anyway. Sadie ate whipped cream with the tip of her spoon and asked whether the judge had made us a family at the beginning of the hearing or at the end. I told her the judge had made it legal at the end, but we had been doing the work of being a family long before that. Nora looked out the window. Legal is harder to undo. I did not tell her nothing could ever change. She had heard too many promises built from words like forever and never. Instead, I told her the truth. Legal means no one can return you because you get angry, have a bad week, or need more help than they expected. She looked down at the certificate again. That evening, the blue duffel bag remained beside her bedroom door. I wanted to move it. I wanted to empty it, wash it, and hide it in the attic where it could no longer threaten us. Instead, I left it where Nora had placed it. A judge's signature had changed her legal status in a morning. Her body would need more time to believe it. My mother sent an email the next day. She wrote that she was sorry the situation had become so painful. She said every decision had come from love and concern for Sadie. She hoped I would eventually understand that good intentions sometimes looked harsh when children were involved. I read the message once and did not argue with a single sentence. My reply was short. There would be no private contact with Sadie. There would be no church outings, photographs, overnight visits, or family events involving either girl until both children felt safe and I believed the boundaries would be respected. Any future contact would include both sisters unless Nora and Sadie themselves asked for something different. Kimberly responded within minutes. You are punishing the entire family because Mom tried to protect a child. For most of my life, that accusation would have pulled me into an explanation. I would have softened my answer until everyone could pretend the boundary was temporary. This time, I wrote that a boundary was not a punishment. It was the condition required for contact with my children. Then I stopped replying. My father called 2 days later. He did not say my mother had meant well. He said he had heard conversations he should have stopped and watched Nora leave his house with a packed bag, without asking why the bag had been prepared so quickly. I told myself staying quiet kept things from getting worse, he said. It only made your mother's version sound like all of ours. I believe you are sorry. Can I see the girls? Not alone. He breathed out slowly. You may send a card addressed to both of them, I continued. If they want to respond, they will. An apology does not restore access. He accepted that without asking me to comfort him. It was the first useful thing he had done. Aaron helped us rebuild the support plan, with people who had no interest in displaying the girls as proof of their kindness. I joined a group for parents adopting teenagers, where no one looked shocked when I admitted that love and exhaustion could exist in the same room. A new respite caregiver named Denise met us at a park 3 times before she ever entered our house. She spoke to Nora as a teenager, not as a warning label, and never invited Sadie anywhere without including her sister in the conversation. Nora also began working with a counselor on the difference between protecting Sadie and taking control of every danger before another adult could respond. She practiced calling me, stepping back, and using words before her body became a shield. Sadie practiced coming to me when she felt overwhelmed. The first time she crossed a crowded room and tapped 4 times against my wrist, Nora went very still. I tapped back and helped Sadie name 4 blue things. Nora watched until Sadie's breathing slowed, then looked away. Later, I found Nora sitting alone on the back steps. She came to you first, she said. You taught her a way to ask for help. She didn't need me. She needed what you gave her. That is different. Nora picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. If she can do things without me, what am I for? You are her sister. You get to annoy her, borrow her pencils, tell her when her jokes are terrible, and love her without being responsible for keeping her alive. A small smile appeared before she could stop it. I framed one photograph from adoption day. It was not the picture Kimberly would have chosen. Sadie's hair had come loose. Nora was not smiling, and my coat was wrinkled from kneeling beside them in the hallway. Nora stood close enough that her shoulder touched mine, and Sadie held both our hands. I placed it on the bookshelf. I did not post it or send it to anyone. It did not need an audience to be true. 6 weeks after the hearing, Nora received an invitation to a 2-night trip with her school art club. The museum program included sketching workshops, a printmaking class, and 1 night in a hotel near Philadelphia. Her first answer was no. Sadie has school, she said. What if she gets scared? I'll be here. What if Denise has to pick her up? Then Denise will pick her up. Nora glanced at Sadie, who was coloring at the table. Sadie held up 4 fingers. I can do the taps with Mom. Nora looked almost offended by how confidently she said it. Then she read the trip form again. The evening before departure, Nora pulled the blue duffel bag from beside her door. For the first time, I watched her pack things that had nothing to do with surviving a removal. She added a sketchbook, charcoal pencils, headphones, 2 bags of pretzels, and an extra sweater because she could not decide which one she wanted. Sadie tried to add the stuffed rabbit. Nora handed it back. He has to stay and protect your pillow. Before bed, Nora left a note on the kitchen table. Back Friday. On Friday afternoon, I heard her key turn in the front door. She entered complaining that the hotel eggs had tasted like wet paper, and that one boy had spent the entire bus ride singing the same chorus. Sadie ran toward her. Nora hugged her, but she did not check the windows, ask who had visited, or inspect the room for signs that something had gone wrong. She dropped the blue bag beside the stairs and looked at me. Is there anything to eat? The first time Nora packed that bag, she was leaving to save her sister. The next time, she packed it because she finally believed she had a home to come back to.